coming. I'm really excited to be here and share this journey with y'all. I think you can see that. Should be good. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about breeding for wonder, my 10-year Kingfisher seed selecting journey. Um, and gonna kind of come along on this adventure that I've taken over the last 10 years, and talk a little bit about what that journey has been like. I would say that I'm covering a lot of ground, so feel free to you can hop in with questions throughout. There's going to be time for questions at the end as well, but if things come up, I'm happy to have questions as we go because, yeah, we're just covering a lot of ground. So thanks everyone for coming. Nice. Okay. So first I'm going to introduce myself and sort of give you a structure of what I'm going to be talking about today, topics I'm going to cover, and we'll go from there. So my name's Jesse Schaefer. I use he, him pronouns. I've been growing in a lot of different contexts and forms for the last 15 years, and focusing on technical assistance for the last 8. So technical assistance really being farmer support and education. I would consider myself a pretty passionate orchard keeper and seed saver, but I wear a lot of different hats, both literally and metaphorically. I like hats a lot, but I also kind of have a lot of different roles. Today, I'm going to be talking really as my hobby and seed saver passionate hat, but I also work for University of Illinois Extension as their outreach associate in urban and innovative agriculture. So that I manage a grant program that supports urban farmers in Chicago. So if that piques anyone's interest and they want to follow up, my contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Um, so for the presentation structure itself, we're going to start by defining what a fish pepper is, as well as some technical terms associated with seed saving and seed selecting, just so that we're speaking the same language and the sort of the sometimes nitty gritty or technical terms, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, then we're gonna go on this adventure, this 10 years of seed saving in all these different contexts, and really what's next for this seed saving journey. And then leaving time for questions, like I mentioned. And that's an embarrassing picture of myself from 2014. I was very excited about the garlic we were growing, and that was the farm where all of this sort of started from. Um, Let me know if I'm going a little too fast. Great. So I like puns. I'm gonna try to hold control myself, but it's gonna keep happening. So I would say there were some stumble beginnings here with this all coming together. I was farming at a lovely little farm called Quail Hill Farm in New York in 2014. And the farm director at the time, Scott Chasky, he would call himself a farmer poet. And I think as much as he loved growing food, which he had been doing for more than 30 years at that point, he loved writing and telling you about it. And so he wrote a book. He had just published a book the year before called Seed Time. And it talked about the politics and prose and history and context of seeds. So seeds were kind of all around me. And this experience really sparked, in a lot of ways, my seed saving journey and passion for the work in a way that I didn't know at the time. The picture at the bottom right is a result of in addition to the farm director, I had a farm manager who was extremely passionate about hot peppers in an unreasonable way, which led to my unreasonable love of hot peppers. And they were growing somewhere between 15 to 20 different varieties of hot peppers, and not just like a handful, but at scale. So we had hundreds of bed feet of hot peppers, which is again an unreasonable amount. No one needs that amount of hot peppers, but it was a lot of fun to learn about and explore. And and suffer through taste testing. So this was really my first like this experience and diving into the deep end of hot pepper diversity, and as a result, fish peppers specifically. So it really was my first foray into this world. So as it goes with being an apprentice on a farm, you usually are doing all of the work, but also the dirty work. And so on a very cold, wet, rainy November day, I was tasked with the final bulk harvest from the hot pepper field before the big frost was coming. So right after a frost, these plants can't survive that. So you do a big harvest before that comes. Again, we didn't need more hot peppers, but I was assigned to the task, so I was happy to do it. So that picture actually is me taking a selfie from that cold day in 2014, thinking nothing of it, but just remembering how cold it was and wanting to be like, wow, this is really cold. I'll remember this. And going down the row, harvesting peppers in bulk, and I get to the fish pepper section, and I'm looking at them, and something weird about this plant. Every single pepper on this pepper plant was covered in these crowns. So that's that picture, also taken that day, cold day in November 2014. And I was just blown away. I was stunned, really just in awe. Again, freezing in the pepper patch, but stopping in a way that you don't really when you're an apprentice. You're supposed to keep cranking, but I distinctly remember being stopped in my tracks by the awe of this amazing pepper. Um, so that's setting the scene of what happens next. So let's talk fish, or how fish peppers reeled me in. I'm insufferable. So fish peppers have an amazing story, and they they're part of this amazing history of black and brown farmers cultivating this pepper in the Mid-Atlantic region, and more specifically in urban centers, so in Philly and Baltimore, pre-World War II. That they were cultivating these crops for multiple different reasons, and as part of what hooked me in. So they were being cultivated for seasoning on the one hand. So um, you can kind of see it in this picture, and you'll see it in future slides. But when the peppers are unripe, some of them are fully white. And so what they did was these peppers could specifically spice up Creole fish stews. And it partially gets its name from fish, but it was particularly interesting because the white peppers could be dried white, and they would make a white hot pepper powder, which no other pepper can do. So when you're making like a chowder or a Creole fish stew that you want to stay white, you could use this hot pepper powder that basically no one else had, and make sure that the peppers wouldn't discolor the soup and make it kind of a brown color. So it was special for the soup, but also Creole fish stews was common in the culture. And so this was an opportunity to bring together the peppers that were being grown and to season their food. And then also, many people in the community were caterers. And so this was an amazing way to have their special crop that they could season fish stews with, both on a commercial scale, but also for their own families. Um, at the same time, as you can see in this picture, and we'll explore, they're beautiful. They were cultivated for their ornamental use. So folks could use them in their gardens to just make it beautiful by growing these striated, striped peppers. But then also some folks were landscapers. So suddenly you could be using them in a garden where you're making it beautiful while also harvesting and then seasoning your food with it. So to begin with, I was already in on this pepper, thought it was fascinating to see a multi-use um, and multifaceted pepper, and a reflection of community resilience and community ingenuity in a way that I was just learning through a seed itself. I was already hooked on the beauty coming from multiple different levels, sharing culture through food, storytelling. Um, and I have a finite amount of time, so there is a link to the source of all this information, but there's an incredible story that, so this seed had become sort of almost a tall tale. It had been lost to time by World War II. And around that time, most people just had heard about it as an urban legend because because of the transitions in urban life, most of the seed had been lost. This amazing artist named Horace Pippin, some of you may be familiar with, um, he had a relationship, like a partnership, friendship with this man, the grandfather of this man, William Woys Weaver. And as friends, Horace Pippin had some had ended up with a disability as a result of his military service in World War One, which left him with chronic pain. And William Woys Weaver's grandfather was doing this sort of alternative bee sting therapy where he would use his bees to help with people's pain, which in retrospect feels a little interesting, but that was a thing that he was doing. So Horace Pippin, in exchange for William Woys Weaver's grandfather's bee sting therapy, would give him these amazing heirloom seeds that no one else had. And they traded in the form of these a series of different heirloom seeds. Fast forward 60 years later, William Woys Weaver's grandfather passes away. They're clearing the house. I'm gonna stop saying this guy's name, Weaver, right? Weaver's uh, going through the freezer and finds this huge collection of these heirloom seeds that no one had heard about in decades. You can hear the story on Seed Savers Exchange. It's unbelievable. Turns out Weaver is he's interested in seed collection, and he connects with Seed Savers Exchange. They grow them out, and then by 1995 they're able to put it on the market, and these seeds are brought back to all these people who had talked about it. People knew it existed, but it was through this wild series of events that took place that we even get to have fish peppers now. So I'm hooked at this point. Also, apologies for speaking too quickly because I got excited about it. But every time, I think it's really an incredible story of history and community and connections, and how seeds are a testament to that. So I'll move on from this, but for me, it's so important because the story that I get to tell by growing kingfishers, it's I get to continue to tell this story by doing my weird seed breeding project. And it's so great to be able to honor that story and share the joy of these people that came before me. So it just feels really critical to share. But yeah, there's the source. You can look it up. Great story. That's just a brief part of it. There's more. Okay. Uh, it's going to get a little dry here. I think it's really important to talk about the technical terms we're using. I take them for granted. I'm really hype on seeds, but I think it's worth defining, and then we'll move through it. So I'm referencing this great book that's a picture in the corner, Breed Your Own Vegetable Varieties by Carol Depp. She's a boss of seed keeping. She's an icon who still exists. Look her up. So variety is a population of plants that are predictable and defined with respect to characteristics that matter to the grower. So we throw these words around a lot. I'll use synonyms for that. Some people call them varietals, some people call them types. Open pollinated, OP, that's the type of seed that I'm using in this. So that means it's a stable variety. It breeds true from seed. So year after year, if you save it under field conditions, it's going to keep producing that variety. And that's really distinct from hybrids. So modern hybrids, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but hybrids are generally two inbred parent genetics crossed. So if you were to grow them the next year, they would not breed true. They would have different genetics and they wouldn't look like the previous one. Again, we're not scientists here. We're just doing our best. So we're not going to go there. Cultivar, really a fancy name for a cultivated variety. Going to mix and match. Heirloom can be a divisive term. In the book, they literally call heirlooms varieties that have been around for a while. And I think that's great because it's not that important what that means, but just that it's been around for a while. Other people like to cut off at World War II because it's a pre-industrial level of production of seeds. Pick your poison, whatever floats your boat. But generally speaking, it's a variety that's stable and been around for a while. So fish peppers are a great example of an heirloom seed. So selection, that's what we're talking about tonight. It's the process of choosing the appropriate individuals to maintain a variety. So tonight I'll talk about selecting the varieties that I like. Seed saving, seed selecting can be used interchangeably. Cull, that's to remove inferior or undesirable plants in a system. So it's like that one doesn't have the genetics I want. I'm going to take it out. You can call me Dante Culpepper. So isolation distance is the distance that you need to keep plants apart to keep the varieties from crossing. So we're not going to, again, go in the deep end here, but if they're too close together, they'll cross with each other. And then you will end up with new plants. And I'll talk about the mistakes that I made and how I did that, because I was a novice when I started. Uh, and then last but not least, phenotype, fancy way of saying what the organism looks like, the genetics that you can see. So I'm going to be talking almost exclusively about phenotypic traits, which are to say variegation, fancy word for striping. I'm talking a lot about striping today. I'm talking about the crowns, the shoulder growths, and that's another form phenotypic trait. Okay, moving along here. A lot to cover. I'm gonna try my best. Okay, so this should bring us to uh year 2. Did I skip one? Let me make sure. Oh, I did. Sorry. Surprises. Let's see. Okay. Yes. So Um, in 2014, I picked those peppers. I saved seed on them. And the following year, I happened to be at UC Santa Cruz's Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, CASFIS, and it's a 6-month farmer training program. You're living with people ranging in age from 18 to 63 years old, 40 folks from around North America, and I would say peak nerd for agriculture at this point. I could not be more excited to be there, to be learning with people, and really jumping down the seed saving rabbit hole, and just really wanting to trial the seeds that I had just saved. So I decided to do seed trials. Didn't have any space to do them, but I was like, I'm going to do seed trials. I saved all these seeds. I want to see the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between. So there was a defunct kitchen garden behind the common area, the common eating area, and it was like 3 feet of brambles. Someone mentioned that it had once been a place where people got to grow their own special crops. And I was like, what? People used to grow in there? So the theme of just having too much excitement and will continue throughout this. And I started to go out there ripping weeds out, 3 feet of them the whole way through. And other people were like, this guy's crazy, but also why not? So they joined me. And next thing I knew, we had cleared out this area. And I wanted it to be a growing space for everybody, but I also really wanted to grow my peppers. So I was like, I'll clear it all and then it'll be great for everyone, but also I can do my seed trials. So that's sort of when things started to really go off the deep end in a really great way. Let's see here. Okay. So um, on the left, you can see the first picture. You can see that that's the cleared kitchen garden. That again, I'm not good at taking before pictures. You'll notice this is a theme, but yeah, covered in weeds, absolutely out of control. And on the right of that, that's sort of as things are growing throughout the season. So we clear the kitchen garden. I've sown my seeds in the greenhouse in the previous picture where I was like creepily hovering over them. And I transplant those fish peppers into the plot that you can see in the bottom right, put them on drip, start fertilizing them, and then I map out the plot. So each plant has its own little spot on my notebook, and I'm taking notes on each one. Again, I should just reference that I really had no idea what I was doing, and I'm still considering myself to be a novice, and that this has all been just a learning experience by doing. And I want to reiterate that because I think that sometimes seed saving can seem like a fancy art or a science. I really think it's for everyone. So, um, I'm recording all the different features of these. I am really just thriving being a nerd on seeds. And I start, as we learned earlier, culling out plants, ripping them out, and taking out the features that aren't good and keeping the ones that I like. So I think this picture on the bottom right is after a couple have come out. And then always a good reminder, bring your friends into your crazy ideas. So this is a dear friend of mine from back then. He's saving seed with me on tomatoes. I was trying to dehybridize sun golds. We're not going to get into that. That's hybrid genetics. Two thumbs way down. I gave up by 2017. But like I said, I was very excited about seeds at the time, and nothing could stop me except ultimately the genetics being too complex. But that's a story for another time. So I call the bad ones, keep the good ones, and learn a lot in that first year. So here we go. Year one, successes and failures. Um, so lots of learning, lots of nerding. Again, I was the person who was putting their hot peppers in their little bunk place that was supposed to keep my toothpaste. I like couldn't get enough. If the theme hasn't become clear, I was very excited about what was happening there. And so like, yeah, you would come to my little shelf and sometimes it would have my shaving stuff, but sometimes it would just be filled with all of my hot peppers. So some of these pepper plants are variegated. They have their striping. Some of them are variegated but don't have their crowns. Some have both, and those are the ones that I'm really saving seed on, right? And I'm taking out the other ones. And so all of the, again, trying to select for the genetics that I wanted, which again was maintaining the fish pepper striping that's natural to them, and then keeping the crowns on them as well. Oh yeah, I talked to trying to dehybridize the sun gold. So much effort, so much time, not worth it. But again, it, the theme here is that we live and we learn, and that the best way for me to learn a lot about seed saving was just to do it. And my lack of knowledge, in some ways, was good because it didn't limit me. I think I did more experimenting than I would have if I had known better. And so I think, in retrospect, being a novice and entering with a beginner's mind, I think is really positive, both in seed saving and in life and agriculture. But I would learn that isolation would be an issue that year. I don't believe too many other people were growing peppers, but it was my first time growing right up next to other people with peppers. And so again, isolation would become a theme, and we'll talk more about that. So here are some of those genetics from 2015. Again, you can see the ones that are more white that I was talking about earlier that would heat up Creole fish stews. They're magnificent. Again, this is why I'm hooked, right? I was like, these jewels of peppers. I can't believe I get to grow them, that I get to tell their story. So yeah, I'm hooked. Let's see here. Okay, year two. I keep traveling because I really wanted to farm real bad and nerd out on agriculture and teach people and farm in community. And yeah, the universe called my bluff, and suddenly I was in Birmingham, Alabama for 4 years. We'll talk about that. So I end up being the farm manager at a little place called Jones Valley Teaching Farm. That's the overhead view of it. What a time. This urban farm literally in the center of downtown. We were adjacent to a series of railroads, the intersection of two of the largest interstate highways of Alabama, the flight path overhead to the airport, a public school, state housing, vacant lots, and a police siren mechanic shop. At first, I thought there was a lot of crime in the neighborhood, and then it turned out they were literally testing cop sirens every day over and over again. And it took me way too long to figure out that it was just a siren mechanic shop, but you live and you learn. But I say all that to say, people associate agriculture with this pastoral life. It was not quiet where we were, but a lot of fun farming nonetheless. But I'm tasked with the crop plan of running the farm. And a theme that you will again notice is that I sneak the kingfishers in wherever I can. So again, we had 3 acres to work with. So I snuck them in with our pepper patch. Again, in retrospect, learning about isolation, I can't grow them next to each other with other hot peppers that are in the same species. We're not going to get again in the deep end of that, but this is Capsicum annuum that is the species of this pepper, which is to say any other species of pepper that's in Capsicum annuum will cross with it. So that's everything from your regular sweet peppers, poblanos, um, cayenne, serranos, a whole bunch of common peppers are in that plant family. So if they're next to each other, they cross. But because it's a teaching farm, you want to keep your hot peppers together, because if your hot peppers are near your sweet peppers, only bad things will happen, right? From a teaching perspective. So I had to keep my hot peppers by the other hot peppers so that children and adults would not suffer by accidentally picking hot peppers and thinking they were sweet. So as a compromise, I had to keep them close, which led to less isolation, which led to more crossing. We'll get into that. Ultimately, I spent 4 years there. I've become the senior farm manager, so I oversee 7 teaching farms across the city of Birmingham, all at public schools, ranging from a 2-acre high school urban farm to like small gardens. And I only mention that to say we'll talk about how other farmers in Birmingham get to grow out the pepper, so I have more isolation distance. Sorry, I think I'm speeding up. I apologize if I'm going too fast. So these are some of the first year genetics. You can see not a full crown in the bottom right. That's just like an outgrowth, but that usually is what it looks like when it doesn't produce a full crown, but it has some of the genetics, phenotypic genetics we learned about. And then again, the beautiful striping, speckled foliage, also on the peppers too. Okay, year 2, the first year in Birmingham. Again, you can see the full white peppers, magnificent. And also some with full crowns. So some of the successes are that growing in Alabama is ideal conditions for pepper breeding and really peppers in general. It's an extremely long growing season so you've got high organic matter in the soil. So that means a lot of nutrients for plants to grow from. So you can grow beefy, big plants, which is what you need for seed saving. Large amounts of rain, close to 56 inches a year. Temps above 95 degrees consistently with 90% humidity, June through October. So you got heavy duty growing conditions, not great to live in my opinion, but great growing conditions for hot peppers. They love it. And again, the failures are the lack of isolation. So you've got crossbreeding amongst different Capsicum annuum plants. It's also a teaching farm. So we're going to reframe that, but it means lots of people make mistakes all the time. So that means people are harvesting unripe peppers. You can't save seed on unripe peppers. So when they're white like that, they don't have fully mature fruits in them, or sorry, they don't have fully mature germplasm or seeds inside of them. And so somebody would be like, Jesse, I harvested all these fish peppers for you. It's like, that's great. I can't use any of the seed because they're not ripe. So a lot of little mistakes like that. Also, people, when they weed, they'll pull out your pepper plants that you so dearly cared for, right? So a lot of things are happening at a teaching farm. It comes with the territory. We're learning, right? We're learning. Yeah, lots of learning. But you can see in my first year in this is 2016, starting to get those crowns showing up. Again, the magnificence that I've been selecting for. Also, from a marketing perspective, people started to hear about this guy's weird hot peppers. So Farmer Jesse's specialty hot peppers could be a marketing thing at the farmer's market. So that was another pro of getting to do it down there. Okay. What's growing on in Birmingham? So from 2016 to 2019, I got 4 seasons to grow in an absurdly hot climate with a long season. So that's a lot of seed genetics that you can select from over time. So some of these pictures are just seed selection that happened over time. I like the top one because it feels like it wants to fight, which is what it felt like farming in Alabama for 4 years. But lots of opportunity for trials, selection, learning so many layers of these peppers. And like I said, long seasons, multiple harvests, which is great for seed saving. Also, again, I keep going, but if questions come up throughout, you let me know because I'm just so excited. So Like I said, crossbreeding is a theme. It just keeps happening. I start to learn better later on, but I wouldn't say too late because I still have robust genetics, but definitely yeah, more mixed than I would have liked at the time for keeping them consistent. Um, and then we're also growing at different sites. So um, it what is Jesse's weird hobby also becomes this great opportunity for professional development and education because we get to talk about seed saving in a real way and how we can all be seed savers. We can all learn about germplasm, that you don't need to be a scientist or an expert in the field to do this. And so it ended up wasn't just Jesse's weird hobby, but also an opportunity for everyone to learn, which was really positive. And again, why I love running teaching farms. It's my favorite thing to do. Um, and like I said, my peppers also ended up becoming popular at the farmers market. Again, my hope, we'll talk more about it at the end, but when I'm thinking about why grow these seeds for other people, it can set you apart, right, at a farmer's market and be like, oh, they've got these weird peppers that no one else has. Lots of happy accidents and learning throughout. And one of those was that I there was a time where I used to be on social media a lot, and I would post about my kingfishers. And this farmer in Tennessee reached out, and they were like, "I've been noticing these crowns on my fish peppers too. What's going on?" So what that taught me was that these genetics are really just below the surface, that it's actually potentially more common than we think. The only difference is that I'm a weirdo who just kept saving seed on it, right? So I think it was just a really awesome reminder that the genetics are there, that they're robust, and that if we select them, they can really shine through and continue to grow. Um, like I mentioned, multiple harvests, lots of the crop, perfect conditions. That's just like one bin of fish peppers. They were coming out of my ears, right? It was a good place to do it. And it's really important, again, in seed trials, especially for these plant families, you need a lot to really be able to test and get good seed and all that sort of stuff. So working at a teaching farm was a great, in some ways, a great way to do that. Yeah, I got lost in the sauce, y'all. I was there for 4 years. I got really into fish peppers. Was doing all sorts of stuff with them. So in the top middle, I was smoking them. I really enjoyed smoking peppers because you can store them. And was curious. We're not going to get into this, but fish peppers have a thicker skin that for me was really good for smoking. Um, yeah, I got deeper into loving hot peppers. So on the left, that's just like kind of a rainbow of some of the varieties I used to grow. Um, Turning them into hot sauce, really trying to find out everything I could about these peppers. We had a lot of these native grapes. Oh, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I had so much, I was like, what if I made a grape pepper hot sauce? 2 thumbs down. But again, we were learning, right? We were learning here. It was not good. But again, really seeing the diversity of the genetics, again, this beautiful canopy they would set of just like striations and variegation and beautiful peppers. Loved it. Keeping it going. Cool. So these were some of like the real triumphs, is a strong word for what I'm doing here, but yeah, those are the crowns out in the field over the years. Each time truly wondrous, right? You're out in the pepper patch, you're picking hot peppers. It's 95 degrees out. You're schwitzing, right? And then you come upon something like this and you're like, this is why I do it. This is why we're seed breeding here. So really, really fun to like see what it was capable of and what it looked like in the wild. And I swear we're making progress on this story, just deep on this adventure. Um, okay, 2019, the journey continues. At this point, I'm leaving Birmingham. I know I'm moving to Chicago. That's the goal. And I'm, again, at this point, my last year, I'm circling around the different farms, doing professional development, training them, reviewing crop plans, diagnosing diseases, really just there to serve as extra help for these farmers at their different public schools. I'm peeking around. People are growing my fish peppers at different places. And at one of these sites, I noticed they have these really healthy kingfisher plants. Um, Loaded with kingfisher peppers. I keep calling them that, but I realized I didn't nickname them until 2019, when I really felt like I had created something different. But the frost is coming. I'm looking at their garden and I'm like, huh, those are some really nice kingfisher plants. I hope nothing bad's gonna happen to them. So I talked to them and I was like, what are you gonna do when you have to rip out your kingfisher to replace it with fall crops, right? They had to put in their brassicas, their fall crop plan. They were like, we have no plans for them because we're reasonable people. And I was like, well, I'm not. So can I dig this up and take it with me? So that's absolutely what I did. And I brought it and I put it in my truck. Uh, and they were very nice about it. And I wrote a poem about how unhinged I was. I'm unhinged. I took pepper plants from public school, gardens for research. Yeah. And that's the truck that I used to drive around for work. And I just stuffed in a couple of kingfishers because I'm out of control. So those plants come with me. I literally drive with them from Birmingham. In that fall, between moving to Chicago, uh, a wild series of events occurred where I agreed to move to North Carolina to help my friends build a Jewish farm out on their land. And I set a date. I was going to move there March 20th, 2020. Hindsight sure is 2020. It was a wild time to move to a farm. And um, they were starting this amazing Jewish agrarian community called Yesod Farm and Kitchen. Um, and I brought the kingfisher peppers with me that I had taken from the public school. And also had my seed collection that I'd saved from the previous 4 years as well to add to the biodiversity. And we sort of make a handshake agreement. Jesse's going to help us with production, start this farm off, and he gets housing, and we're going to make this work. And I was like, deal, let's do it. So I come there and I help to establish an herb and kitchen garden around the house. An experimental seed garden. Again, the theme of the kitchen garden continues. A lot of will and enthusiasm. I'm like, I'm going to start another plot in addition to the farm that I'm helping them start. Um, and we set up this experimental seed garden where I can grow out my kingfisher trials again, while also growing out all these other weird seeds that I had been accumulating since 2014. Uh, Again, oh, this garden will be shared by all of us. We can all grow our things. But again, I have these plans of my kingfishers. So, and then in addition, there's the 1 acre diversified veggie plot that I'm helping them grow, all for mutual aid. We were going to donate it regardless. And then the pandemic hit. So it was a great opportunity to continue to do the mutual aid work that we were hoping for. Um, so that's me again, too enthusiastic about agriculture. I had a half a tank of gas and a lot of enthusiasm and plowed this extra field, and that's where we ended up doing the experimental seed area, I would say. And then that's after, right, gets plowed. We tarp it, fertility amendments, and then plant some plants. So towards the bottom right there, those are pictures of some of the kingfishers getting grown out. Okay, 2020, wild time. There were some successes and failures, as with every season. Um, the seed garden experimental plots were beautiful for isolation. I was finally getting to isolate my peppers away from other peppers, right? The fields down there were a good bit away, and I could isolate them. And then select features, sort of doing what I had done back in 2015, but now with all of these genetics that have been saved over many years. Again, it's the early pandemic, a lot of downtime, a lot of staring at plants, a lot of documentation, right? A lot of notes, mapping them out like I did before. Again, culling, pulling out the plants that don't have the right genetics and selecting. Unfortunately, again, hindsight 2020, I moved to Chicago in July to be closer to my family during the pandemic. And once again, I have to dig up my plants. Not a great way to save seed, but such was life. So I dig up my plants, put them in my car. Um, At the same time, we're having not great results at the farm itself. The seeds that were sent to me ultimately by the end of the season just weren't very good. I don't know if things were lost in translation, but the quality and the quantity was not great on the seeds. So most of those trials that were left at that farm were unsuccessful, which was very sad because it put a lot of work into getting that area prepped. But things don't always shake out the way you want. The other piece of it was that the pepper plants likely didn't do as well because the fertility was still being built, right? In those other pictures, I had just plowed that soil, heavy clay. Yes, we added a lot of compost, but probably not enough to get the peppers yielding the results that we needed for the genetics, which is a foreshadow. We'll talk about fertility towards the end. That said, those are pictures of them in transit with me, and we'll move on to the next one. So this is fall of 2020. I'm in Chicago, again, creepily staring at my pepper plants, and we're saving seed on the plants that I had, some of which dug up in Birmingham in 2019, some of which I had dug up in North Carolina in 2020. Again, not the best conditions, but I really wanted to save these genetics. I've saved seed for many years, and yet somehow I always forget not to touch my eyeballs or my nose. So this is a set of pictures of me realizing what I've done and how spicy it can be. Big pro tip when you're saving pepper seeds. I was even wearing gloves. I was so smart, and yet touch the eyeballs. And so that's just me suffering, and just part of life. Okay, we're moving along. We don't got much time. So 2020 to 2021, another wild time. I get hired as the farm manager at the roof crop in July of 2020. 10 out of 10. It's never a good sign getting hired to manage any farm in July. We won't get into the details, but just that's not the time to hire your farm manager. I grow that season with them. I'm tasked with crop planning for 2021. I tell them my story about these weird peppers that I've been breeding. I show them pictures. They're like, "Oh, cool. Let's put it in our crop plan." It's a specialty crop for the business. And then for me, it's ideal conditions. When you're growing on rooftops, ideal place to isolate your peppers. Unfortunately, I leave that farm in June of 2021, not a complete season, which means that nearly all my peppers that I had good success saving seed on were left at the company. All my work from 2021, gone. Bummer. I get hired as the farm manager of the Talking Farm in July of 2021. As we learned earlier, it's never a good sign to get hired as a farm manager in July. Despite that, the plants that I had dug up, the plants that I had saved, I grew them isolated in a tunnel for the fall, the rest of the 2021 growing season. So I was able to save at least some genetics and salvage those. This again shrinks genetic diversity, not what we want when we're saving seeds, but so it goes. We work with what we've got. And I still had some supply from the previous seasons as well. Oh yeah. Again, this theme of me creepily looking at my peppers, it's going to continue. These are some of the beautiful results, really looking like crowns now, flowers, starbursts, whatever you want to call them. But again, the genetics seem to be stabilizing in a good way. We're going to get through these tumultuous years, I swear. So yeah, 2022, we're turning a corner here, folks. I'm in charge of crop planning at the Talking Farm, and classic Jesse move, squeeze my Kingfisher peppers into the tomato tunnel, into the crop plan. In this case, we finally are growing them in a good growing setting at an educational farm. So it's a win-win, right? I can teach people with it, but I can also make sure to isolate them, the genetics I need. It ends up being the best trial that I've done in a number of years. Finally, at this farm, we've got good fertility, good isolation, ability to select, and I'm controlling the irrigation, all of these different features. So you can see in these pictures, pepper plants loaded with kingfishers. Now we're talking. This is early, so they're not even ripe, but it's showing that good things are ahead. I quit the farm in 2022, September of 2022 to focus on grad school, but lots of seeds, lots of good quantity, good quality of seeds. So much so that I'm able to categorize the seeds into striped peppers with incomplete crowns, full crowns, but no stripes, and stripes and crowns, right? Why would that happen, that there would be ones without stripes? The earlier crossbreeding that happened. You'd end up with a pepper that had lost its trait of striping, but kept the crowning. So I could isolate them out and separate them, but keep those genetics I needed. So we're sitting pretty. We're making progress here, folks. Okay, 2023, I take a break. It's the first year not growing full-time agriculture since 2014, but I just didn't have a space to grow. So it was time to take a break. I was finishing up grad school and I have too many side projects. So I was also managing my little nursery of 50 trees as well. So this was a good time to dial back and reflect on where we were in the process and what the next steps were. So having a break ended up working out. I'm gearing up for 2024 to strategize about how to grow without land. What's it going to look like? I probably won't have a plot or a farm to grow on. What's next? How are we going to do this? I reach out to seed companies to gauge their interest, see what they think. Would you want to grow this weird pepper? Experimental Farm Network, Hudson Valley Seed Company, and the Driftless Seed Company. All kind of interested, not committing, but are like, that's the sort of stuff we like to do. So touch base with us when you've got stabilized genetics. We can talk in the future. But it planted a seed, no pun intended, planted a seed in my head that maybe I should have other people grow out my peppers. So these pictures are still from 2022, but it was such a success. It was a good year, means more pictures. So you're looking at a lot of pictures of all the genetics. You can see the ones that are striped, bottom left, in the middle. You can see one kind of directly in the middle that doesn't have striping but has a full crown. Again, these pepper plants are loaded, they're isolated. We got the genetics and we can separate them by striping and crowns, striping, no crowns, crowns and striping, which are kingfish. Okay, we're almost there, I swear. Okay, 2024, the year of off-farm seed trials. Things are really coming together. So I put an open call out for people to grow kingfisher at your farm or garden anywhere you want. The trial of the seed in different climates, settings, conditions, right? Getting to see how this seed actually works out in the world. I end up with 20 locations across the United States where people are growing it out. That said, everybody talks a big game. Everyone's like, oh, I'm a guy, I can save the seed, I can do this. Only 2 farmers come through with quantity of seeds. So that's who you're seeing on the right, Pink Tiger Farms. Wonderful people, highly recommend if you can ever get their products. They also do a lot of amazing hot pepper sauces and other things. They were like, yeah, we'll grow them. So these are some of their successes at their farm, which was, again, seeing my pepper plants out in the wild, the best, just a joy. So those are some of their picks from that season. They wanted to share their successes. But our hero, Cody Bostwick of still don't know how to pronounce this farm, Amalvia Organic Dairy. It's an organic dairy farm in Missoula. And he comes through in a big way, and we're going to feature him on the next slide because that's when things really turn a corner. So our hero, Cody in Missoula. Cody Bostwick, I met him back in 2014 at that first original farm. He was farming adjacent to us at a different farm. That's a cute little picture of us as little babies. I have too much beard in that picture, but down there crouching, that's our guy, Cody. And he grew out the seeds at his farm that season, and he ended up at the end of the year, sent me over 3,000 seeds and was able to fully isolate the peppers and had extreme success. He sorted them by kingfisher again, partial crowns, and just fish peppers. He cracks the code. Unintentionally, he had no idea he was doing this, but one of the issues that I hadn't talked about yet, and I swear we're getting across the finish line here, but we got to go nitty gritty. And I'll try to slow down as well. But one of the things I was noticing was that the flowers were aborting the buds before the fruit completely set. So if you see in this bottom picture, every fruit that I'm producing, fancy word for the peppers, is a fruit set. So it's a pepper with a little crown of extra pepper growths. And so what would happen is the flowers would set, the the fruit would come off the flower, and then it would drop. The whole thing would fall to the ground, which means no pepper is going to grow over time. The immature fruits are being dropped and the plants were barren. And I'm like, what's going on? Maybe I don't know something about seed saving. I got a problem. He shares that he fertigated, it's a fancy word for fishing, which is to say a spray of fish emulsion and Seacom. He's adding fertility to the plants at critical growth stages in their life cycle. So that means that he's fishing, fertigation is I'm mushing together the words fertility and irrigation. He's pumping fertility through the irrigation system at the time of transplanting of these peppers, at the time that the peppers are blooming, and at least one more time during their continued flowering and fruiting. So that means at these critical stages of growth, when the flower is setting and the fruits are setting after them, the extra nutrients that he was pumping into the plants allowed them to hold the fruit set on the plants, which meant that you could then actually get the crop to yield, which was huge because I hadn't figured out what was happening if I was just what was going on. So he connected all these dots that the underproduction or infertility of the plants was likely a result of the fertility issues. These extra nutrients pushed these plants over the finish line that allowed the plants to survive, or the fruits to survive to adulthood. And the multi-fruit pepper that I described with the crown growths could grow. The extra fertility leads to plant withstanding the stress of a multi-fruit set per bloom. Again, that's a lot of words together, but basically this extra fertility allowed the fruits to come to fruition. And he had no idea. He was like, yeah, I just fertilized at these critical points of growth. And I was like, well, yes, that connects all the dots. So that cracked the code. And with that, I was like, oh, I've not only stabilized the genetics, but now I understand the critical fertility to make sure that these plants can be reproduced at all of these sites. So these are some of his seed saving trials, drying them, processing them, but he just had so many peppers. So he sent me a lot of pictures. I think I'm talking too quickly now, but we're almost there now. So 2025 and beyond, right? We've stabilized the genetics here. We've figured out the fertility issues. And I would say that we're at the point where we can coordinate with seed companies, hopefully this spring, for the first real official trials since that 2022 season, and then the 2024 selection years, right? Those were the big years of really getting the genetics selected in the way we wanted. Now, when I'm sending these seed out, I can say, hey, we need critical fertility applications at these critical growth stages so that people can have success and they can have good fruit yields across the board. I'm planning also to share the seeds with folks that are serious about growing the kingfishers with proper isolation. That said, unlike the previous year, which while fun, a lot of people had a good time growing my peppers, we're going to do more commitment in terms of making sure that seed comes back this year because we've really stabilized them. I think some of the biggest takeaways for me in this process, and I really want to stress, are that I'm not a scientist. In a lot of ways, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm really enthusiastic. And I think that when it comes to seed saving, that's really what it's about. You don't need to be an expert in the field, right? We need to make the attempt. We need to try this stuff, and we're going to learn a lot in the process. You could say that my dehybridization of the sun gold was a failure, but I learned a lot in that process too. And even in the years where my plants got ripped out or I stopped working at a place and I couldn't get the seed, things were learned in the process. And each year built up to where I am today, where I have stabilized genetics 10, 11 years on. I want to stress that anyone can do this anywhere. The only thing here was that I stumbled on this weird plant and I really like these genetics. And I said, what if I kept working with these phenotypes, right? What would that look like? And I think that all of us can do that. It can be with cool features, but it can just be with the thing that's in your yard that you like a lot, and you can keep selecting for that. The themes for me here are about perseverance. They're about joy. They're about like hoping that this stuff will come together. It's about like channeling your creativity in different ways. I love art. I'm not exactly an artist in many ways, but I think this gets to be my artistic expression in a lot of ways. That I get to see awe in the mundane of this world that we live in, and that I get to seek out wonder in this world, and that I get to share it with other people through peppers. And for me, it's one of the greatest joys that I could ever ask for. And so I just want to like impart this feeling that like seeds, they tell stories and we get to tell those stories through them. And I think that like for me, it's such a joy to express this wonder, this creativity with all of you today. And I hope that like when you go out into the field and you see things that might be weird or might be normal, like go for it and try it out. And I think that seeds are really extensions of ourselves, and they're a way to tell our stories, and they're a way to tell our ancestors' stories and the generations that have come before us, and to share them with the future. So on that, I think we got some time for questions. But yeah, just wanted to share this adventure with all of you, contextualize it, and know that really it's not me. Like any of y'all could be doing this sort of stuff, and I hope you do, and I hope you get to share those stories with other people. So thanks so much for coming to hear me talk about this.
Thank you, Jesse. Your enthusiasm is definitely contagious. I started pretty tired and now I'm pumped. I'm ready. There's some
Awesome.
questions in the chat as well. Do you want to look through them or I can pick them out for you? And there's also one in the little Q&A section. That one's very long and very good. I, you look.
Katie had to hop off. We can pass on the Q&A one for now, and if we just want to go through the chat, or if folks do want to just come off mute, feel free to hop in.
Jesse, you're muted.
I can answer some of the ones that I'm seeing so far. I think so. That's the nice thing about peppers. I probably should have talked about that. Part of why I save seed on these is because peppers are like the easiest. Just such a such a like bad way to do this, but yeah, I literally scoop the pepper seed out of there and then I put them on newspaper and I let them dry. It's a reason why I think a lot of people sleep on peppers, like in seed saving. People love tomatoes, so they do the fermentation and all that stuff. Peppers are so easy. The biggest thing, you just have to make sure they're fully ripe. So like real red, like real red. Well, again, depending on the variety, but making sure they're fully ripe, almost soft, because to have viable germplasm seeds, you just have to make sure the plant is fully ripe so that it's the seeds have fully matured. But yeah, that's why they're again a really good one for saving seed on too, because like you don't need to do a bunch of stuff. You take them out of the thing and you put them down, but try not to touch your eyes. I feel like I will never learn that lesson. Yeah. Another question. Another question is about fertility treatments. I'm not sure. My gut is yes. Is that because every year those plants are, we use the word stress in agriculture, but they're so stressed by having to do a multi-fruit set on a flower that I think it will require that. I'm curious to see otherwise. I will say, um, in Alabama, I had high organic matter levels plus fertility, and so I had good yields. In all of the times that I've had the most yields and the like consistent fruiting across a plant, it's always been at the high fertility, which means it's already a specialty pepper, but now it's going to be a specialty pepper. And I think that the reason also for that is that, and I don't want to get too down in the deep end, but I think I've got recessive traits stacked on recessive traits. So we know that I probably should have led with this, but striping and variegation is an albino characteristic, right? It's whitening of something that normally doesn't do that. And so that's a recessive trait to begin with. Then on top of that recessive trait, you've now layered the recessive trait of crown growth that only appears on one of so many plants. So I'm breeding recessiveness into a plant that I want stable genetics on, which is kind of a recipe for disaster in some ways. And so my gut says that it's going to be forever, like every season, people are going to have to, not heavily, but definitely fertilize to get the yields that they want on these. But that's my guess so far, because this is I learned the like fertility lesson really in 2024. So we're in new territory, if you will. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Um, I want to be respectful of folks' time. Sorry, I'm talking so fast, getting so excited. Um, there's a great question about the original appeal of these peppers. Did they have the top flower? So, I would say that generally speaking, the fish peppers just look like regular fish, and there was one plant that was not loaded, but had a number of those crowns on them. I think for me, I was already hooked on fish peppers. I was like, I want to tell this story to everyone. I want everyone to experience this. I think it's beautiful. I think that for me, food is so much more than just how it tastes, right? That food for me tells a story, right? It connects to our culture, it connects to our heritage. I love food. And I think that being able to tell the story of food through the crops that you grow too is so special. So at a baseline, I was hooked on fish. And then to be dazzled by something, to cross over between art and food and like nature and beauty, I was floored, right? To me, it's like it brings together so many different things and it allows for creativity that I otherwise sometimes don't get to express in agriculture. So for me, the blending of art and agriculture and story and wonder, I was like, yeah, this is all I need. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. See if there's any other questions. Wow, I probably would have been good to read the comments while I was or the chat because it was like, oh, 15 minutes. Yeah, all these things would have been good. I
No,
was just so
no,
hyped.
it's okay. It's exciting.
Cool. Um, ooh, that's a great question. Thanks, Matt. Hi. Yeah, so that's awesome that told this whole story, never mentioned anything about how they taste, or like what their heat level's like, right? The critical factors of what makes a hot pepper. Sure, Jesse, just bury that lead. I would say that um they definitely are like heat forward. People generally will put them on the like Serrano heat level. But also, thank you. Also, at the same time, 40% of the heat level factor in a pepper is generally determined by the environment you're growing in. So if you're growing your pepper in the desert southwest with low moisture and high heat temps, you're going to get hotter peppers than you would up in Chicago, for example. So generally they can vary a lot, and they were really spicy down in Birmingham. I would say flavor wise, they're like, I would eat them straight because I wanted to know what they tasted like. I would say that they're kind of like the straight heat flavor of a Serrano, but with a little bit more depth and a tiny bit of sweetness, but not much at all. Really just through and through high heat. I like the texture also. They dry okay, but flavor wise, they're mostly coming in with the heat, coming in hot, if you will. But yeah, that's a great question, and yeah, they're really fun. They make a great hot sauce. They make a great fermented hot sauce too. Again, especially if you want to clear your sinuses because you can get hot. Yeah.
Jesse, I'm Jesse's mom, and I don't have a question. This is just to embarrass you. So wherever Jesse farmed, I visited him. So I visited him a couple of times in Birmingham, and he would bring his peppers to the farmers market. And he would, unfortunately, didn't have a picture of that. There were at least 4 or 5 different kinds of peppers that he had, and he had them all lined up from like wild to super hot. And
Yeah.
there were different colors and different intensity. And it was really interesting that people could visually have the divisions of all of these peppers. And when he said they were hot, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah. Thanks, Ema, for the hype. It's always good to have a hype man. I do want to also thank you for that. I also want to hype up the feedback form that's going out right now, and want to give a big shout out to all the staff at SIFPAC, all the language interpreters. Just so much effort to like give me the mic. So just a ton of gratitude to everybody who helped make this happen. And thanks for bearing with me. This was a journey, and I just so much gratitude to everyone here on the call and SIFPAC in general. And yeah, thanks for listening. My contact information is there. Don't be a stranger. I'm here. Oh, and I'll be there on Friday in person too. Would love to see all of you there. I'm really excited for that. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jesse, once again for your sincerity, enthusiasm, good energy, uplifting that poll one more time, uplifting the peppers one more time. And yeah, thank y'all for everything. Yeah, that's right. Adam has been my hero this session, and definitely there's going to be some amazing programming tomorrow. I have my agenda filled up, so if y'all don't, make sure you pre-register for everything you're going to want to participate in tomorrow. And yeah, it's going to be great.